Hello, 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 and happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. And so I hope that everyone watching this has had an amazing day so far. All right. I didn't get a chance to go live yesterday, but I'm gonna going live today because this topic that I'm talking about today is very, very important, um, especially for women because one, we live longer, and means that we may potentially have higher expenses. Okay, and so if you were to transition um, and pass away today, would your family be able to take care of your end of life expenses with ease financially? Or would they have to struggle and try to figure out how they're gonna, pay um, for your funeral and things? Would they have to do a GoFundMe? Would they have to do fish fries? Um, you know, Realistically right now, would they be able to pay for your end of life expenses? Okay, and so that's the topic that I'm talking about today, and it's a very uncomfortable topic because um, nobody really likes to talk about end of life. Okay, because it's like a finality. Okay, but planning ahead is one of the most important and most caring things that you can do for your loved ones. And I speak from experience because my mother, she had everything planned out for her and my dad. And when that time came, so very, it made the process a lot easier, even though it was hard. Okay. And so in today's live, I'm going to walk you through the real costs associated with funerals and the medical bills and any lingering debts, and also how to plan for those. And then we'll also explore exactly how life insurance can help relieve your loved ones from this financial strain. Okay. And so, real quick, if you are new to me or to the channel, my name is Katrice, and I am a licensed health and life insurance broker, paralegal, and your wealth architect. I help women entrepreneurs and professionals to grow, protect, and secure their finances, and to build, and leave a financial legacy that they can be so very proud of. Okay. And so, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is breaking down end of life expenses because most people think that end of life expenses is just paying for the funeral. Okay. But there's a lot more that goes into end of life than just the funeral. Um, Now, funeral costs are a main part or a big bulk of it. And the average funeral today can cost anywhere between $7,000 to $10,000. Okay, and that's just for the basics. Okay, so that's not including any custom things that you have done. Say you want a custom colored casket or things of that nature. You want engraving inside of the casket. All of that is extra, but just for the basics. Okay. And then you have to look at, that doesn't include the headstone. Okay. It doesn't include, paying for the burial plot. That's a separate cost. Depending on, if you don't get a headstone, if you get a tomb, to put them in. So it's so much more that goes into it. But, you want to look at it $7,000 to $10,000. Okay. And that's today, in today's time. It will easily climb higher, as time goes on. Okay. And now, while cremation is available and an available option and is a little more affordable, that can still run anywhere between $3,000 and $6,000. Okay. And these expenses can quickly become overwhelming for grieving families. Okay. Now, just imagine having to try to plan for a funeral and not knowing where you're going to get the money from to pay for it. Okay. Um, you know, that's stress, that's extra stress on top of the stress and the heartache that you're already feeling from losing your loved one. Okay. Then you want to also take into account any medical bills. Okay. Medical costs at the end of life are also another huge concern. You have hospital stays, hospice care, treatments, medications, all of that stuff adds up quickly. And even with health insurance, there's going to be deductibles and copays and uncovered treatments. Okay. And so the average family can be left with tens of thousands of dollars in medical bills to pay after the passing of a loved one. And then the next thing that you have to take into account is any outstanding debt. Okay. You know, a lot of people when they pass away, um, they leave behind, maybe personal loans or credit card, balances, or um, a mortgage or a car payment. Um, and these debts, they don't pass away after death. Okay. They can they really truly become your family's responsibility. Okay. Especially if you're married. And so these debts then impact your family's stability. Okay. Now, some companies, depending on the debt, if you let them know that the person has passed away, they may ask you for the death certificate to verify, and then they may you know cancel the debt, or they won't, hold you responsible for the debt because the person is not here anymore. That really just depends on the company. Now, for things like mortgages, car payments, those type of things, you're still liable for that debt. Okay. So how do you cover that stuff? Okay. There's a couple of ways. I mean, you can do the first way is with your savings. If you have an account that you have placed for specifically for your end of life, then that's one way. You can also do it with credit cards. If your family members want to put it on credit and then pay it back over time. Way is with life insurance. Okay. Okay. So, your connection is unstable. Okay. I hope it like catches everything. Okay. And so with the right policy, you can ensure that your family won't face these financial burdens on their own. Okay. Now, there's two types of life insurance, and I'm just going to go over them really quick. I'm not going to go in depth because I have a whole, playlist on, breaking down life insurance. But there's term life, excuse me, which covers you for a set period, and that is typically the more affordable life insurance. And then there's permanent life insurance, which is whole life, universal life, and that offers lifelong coverage plus cash value that you can dip into during your lifetime. So that's another thing when it comes to like the medical bills. If you have, permanent life insurance that has accumulated cash value, you can utilize that cash value in your policy to help you cover some of those medical bills. Okay. Um, Now, if you just have term life, then term life, they do have riders and things that you can add on to term life. Just depending on the carrier, they have different riders and things, but you definitely want to make sure that when you are sitting down with a life insurance agent or broker, that you let them know exactly what you're needing or what you're wanting, so that they can show you a policy that will meet those specific needs. You don't want to be vague. Okay, you definitely don't want to be vague. Now, like I said, each policy type has its benefits and drawbacks, but no matter which one you choose, you are shifting the financial burden of your end of life expenses from your family to the insurance company. Okay. And so that's what you want to do. Um, when my mom died, she had life insurance. Well, both my parents are gone, and they both had life insurance. But my dad wanted to be cremated, so his was a little easier. And plus, I had already gone through it with my mom, so I kind of knew what to expect. I kind of knew what to do. But with my mom, I had never planned a funeral before. I just, I showed up when somebody died. When I was younger, as a child, I didn't know anything about that. I just knew we had to go to the funeral. And so, I was very, very overwhelmed. And, my mom, we found out, because she had liver cancer. We found out she had liver cancer in September of 2008. And she was gone. Wasn't even, I don't think, 5 months later, in February of '09. And so, you know, being the only girl, um, everything was put on me to plan the funeral, to make sure that the insurance policies, I knew where everything was. And thank God that my mom, talked to me about, she already had her obituary wrote out, and she had the obituary wrote out for my dad. And, she told me how, she wanted her funeral. She told me about the insurance and where everything was. So I knew everything, I knew all of that information that I needed. But I was just so overwhelmed with the whole process of having to plan everything, because you got to get the flowers and the obituary. And I thought all of that stuff um, came through the funeral home. But a lot of that stuff, I mean, depending on the funeral home you go to, yes. But a lot of that stuff, I had to like find people to do. It was just very overwhelming. Okay. And so, you want to always make sure that not only do you have life insurance, but you want to make sure that your family knows, exactly what you want. Okay. Um, when it's that time. Okay. So that story brings me into the practical steps that you need to take to start planning for your end of life. Okay. So, right now, what you can do, the first step that you can do is you can start researching the cost of funeral and cremation expenses in your area. Okay. And when you start this research, you want to ask what all is included in the price. Okay. Are you going to provide, the obituaries? What about the flowers? Do I need to get with a local florist? Ask about everything that's included in the service. What about the opening and the closing? Um, you know, Also the cemetery, and if you want to have a little service, there, if you want to watch the casket being lowered, if they still even do that. It's a lot that goes into it. So you want to make sure you ask them what all is included in the price. Okay. The next thing is you want to discuss your wishes openly with your loved ones. Okay. And I'm going to tell you from personal experience. My mama sitting me, like, I can still see us in the house sitting on her bed. And this was way before she got sick. I was like, I had to be like maybe 12, 14, something like that. But I remember her sitting me on, we were sitting on the side of the bed, and her, telling me, this is my obituary, like, and it was in her big red Bible. She had it all in the big red Bible. And I remember her telling me, you know, where everything was, what I needed to do, this the life insurance policies, just really breaking everything down for me. You just don't know. That might be a tough conversation to have, and you and your loved ones, you may not want to have that conversation, but trust and believe, clarity now and having that conversation now and getting clear can prevent so much stress later. Because had she not told me that, I would have been racking my brain trying to figure out the obituary and just everything. And her doing that, even though it was still stressful, it wasn't as stressful as it could have been. And so you definitely want to make sure that you have the conversation with your loved ones. Okay. And then the last step is, if you don't have life insurance coverage, then you need to get life insurance. Okay. If you do have life insurance, then you need to do make sure you're doing regular policy reviews to make sure that the coverage that you have is still adequate enough to cover your end of life expenses. Okay. And so now, if you don't have life insurance coverage, then you can book a complimentary consultation with me, and I can explain your options, answer your questions, and then help you to select the best coverage that will fit your unique situation. Okay. Planning for end of life expenses truly is not about you. It's really about your family members and making sure that your transition is as easy as possible for them financially, um, but also not just financially, but also in the planning as well. Because the more information they know about, how you want your end of life um, to look like, the easier it is for them. Okay. All right. And so that's what I have. So, real quick, just to recap in this live, I talked about the importance of preparing ahead for, knowing, the different costs that are associated with end of life. Also, the ease and relief that planning provides to families. And then I gave you 3 steps on how you can start, planning for your end of life. Okay. And so I want you to, if you're watching this live, I want you to take this seriously and start planning, take immediate steps to start the planning process. And so let me know in the comments if you have planned have started the planning process for your end of life, or if you're going to be starting that, because you've watched this video and you're like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And that is definitely something that I'm going to, sit down and really, make sure I take care of. Okay. All right. And so that's what I have for you in this live. And so if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I so do appreciate you. And so my goal is to always provide practical, actionable financial advice to help you to take control of your finances and your future. And so if you would like to book a complimentary consultation with me, you can do so using the link in the description of this video. And if this video provided you with tremendous value, then please do give it a like and share it out with your business bestie or water cooler homegirl who needs to hear this message. And also subscribe if you want to continue to learn how to grow, protect, and secure your money. And don't forget to check the description. in the video for additional tools and resources if you want more guidance outside of the content that I provide on this channel. All right. And so remember, the way to secure your financial future is to protect it now, because tomorrow is definitely not promised. All right. Have a good one.